Hello and welcome to another episode of Creative Appetite. Today I'm joined by my good friend Alex. He is the creative director of Herbert Bar in Noosa, and he's also a freelance flavour
consultant.
Yeah, there we go, that works. Well, let's just get into this now that it's taken me about 20 goes to figure this one out. More nervous than I thought I was at the start when I was like sitting.
Why are you nervous?
I don't know. I was just like, I think there's been a lot going on. I was like, my brain was going flat out. I had all this intro like coming into it, and I was thinking, I was like, yeah, I got this nailed. It's gonna sound so sick.
Who is this man?
Like this big spiel, and then just get like a couple of words out, muck it up, try again about 20 times. But we're here now, so it's all good.
Yeah, sick.
So let's there's so much we can talk about, but we'll start at Herbert and then we'll work our way backwards.
Yeah, okay.
So
Well, Herbert is the love child of myself and my business partner, Leon Johnson. And essentially the whole concept is to break down this barrier between meat and vegetarian. And instead of being a restaurant which is like, if you want veggies and vegetarian food, you can only eat veggies. And the other restaurants which serve meat, and they're like, well, we have one vegetarian or two vegetarian options. It's like, well, why does there need to be this division when we can have both coexisting? And so what we have is our menu is primarily plant-based, but we have one seafood and one red meat dish. And that kind of allows us to have a longer and I think a more substantial impact on our guests, because we can satisfy the steak eater, but also they get to try a bunch of like plant-based dishes along the way, which hopefully can let them realize that there's more to it than just that.
yeah, I think it's like a really interesting outlook or take on restaurants and like the whole bar experience in general. Just because you do like, it's like 90% plant-based and then maybe 10% like meat.
Yeah.
Which kind of...
It's like the opposite of a regular restaurant.
Yeah. But it's kind of cool because like if you are a meat eater, then you don't feel out of place, because I find that a lot of meat eaters, if they're fully like hardcore meat eaters, they won't go to vegan restaurants or veggie restaurants because they're like, oh no, that's or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But going into your restaurant allows them to, if they still are kind of on the fence, it gives them a chance to like still have their meat meal, but then they can also have the veggie meal as well to try it out.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel there's like a whole stigma around vegetarian restaurants in which like, you know, it's like vegetarian restaurants cater to vegetarians and no one else. It's like they've already got their audience, but they won't really delve any further. And I think like if you're only targeting the people who already believe what you believe, then like how are you ever going to change or like impact the popular opinion of something?
Yeah, I reckon it's just going to be an ongoing battle between people who eat meat and people who don't eat meat. But
I think in the next 5 years it's going to be like a real pretty big shift, just as like more and more people become like, because I eat meat, right? But I just try and stay conscious about what I'm eating, where it comes from, right? And what like impacts I'm having through my actions. And so I think like, okay, cool. Like if you're not ready to be veggie every day of the week and you eat steak or you eat, chicken or prawns or seafood or whatever it might be, like one day a week, that's awesome, instead of having steak every night.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and I'm sure like a lot of people would debate this for hours and hours, but it's not, the other great thing about your bar is that it's not just about, like the food aspect's amazing, but then what I found personally is that after going to multiple bars throughout my long drinking career, professional drinker,
Yeah.
it's just that like a lot
certified.
It's like most bars throughout Australia and probably throughout the world as well, is that they all follow the same stereotype of just having the basics, but then they just change the interior.
Yeah.
Where you guys have actually thought it out and all the cocktails are completely different to what you would get anywhere else.
Yeah, I think like we wanted to make a statement in our drinks program and come in with something that's just refreshing and different. So we make all of our juices on site, but then the cocktails that we invent and like the technique that we apply to make the drinks, we want to make drinks that you can only get at Herbert. Very particular experiences that kind of take little parts of creative storytelling and like fun, cheerful ways of like reinventing classics and different things. So that when you come to Herbert, you have like that unique Herbert experience.
Yeah, I would say every single person that I have brought to Herbert have all said the same thing, and like it's like such a funny thing to when your friend owns the bar and you're like, no, I'm telling you, it's sick, and they're like, yeah, right,
Yeah,
like no,
okay,
like
okay,
that no one ever believes you, but seriously, every time I've brought someone there, everyone always leaves and like, man, that was such an experience. So, like, I felt so comfortable there. I was so happy. Like, the bar staff are really great, and it's such a testament to you and Leon that you're providing such a service, not only for the Sunshine Coast but for anyone else that comes through.
Yeah, and I guess like that's a key thing for us, and we really like push for that, is that experience that you have within the venue. And once we open up number 2 and rolling forward with that, that's one of like the paramount aspects of the dining experience, is that you want to be leaving with a really strong, memorable experience from that restaurant, you know, and you want the food to be good, you want the drinks to be good, but you want the staff to be happy. You want the setting to make you feel like, oh, okay, cool, this is cool, you know?
Yeah, it's actually really cool, like the way that the bar staff and the wait staff, when they come, they explain what you're eating and how it all works.
Yeah.
But there's like this nice, like, although it is professional and really like well structured, there's also room for them to like make a little bit of a mistake, and like they're super chill. Like if they make a mistake, they're kind of laughing, and you can tell that everyone's having a really good time, rather than like if they fuck it up, they're like, oh, and you can see they get really flustered. Like they're never flustered. They're always just like, oh yeah, no, sorry. And they're like, I'll come back and I'll tell you about it. I just made a mistake. Like the whole environment there is just so fun and relaxed, but also it's this really well thought out professional outfit that is just like a really well operating bar.
Yeah, and hopefully we're not making too many mistakes, but...
Oh, no, I meant more as in, like, when you had new stuff on. Like, there was one chick there, she was new, and she was like, you could tell she was trying to learn everything, but she didn't feel stressed, like, if she made the mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we really push for that, like, staff feeling happy and relaxed. Like, there's no yelling or shouting in the kitchen at all. And anyone who starts to, like, dish out little stress, it's like, nah, that can't be happening. Like, we need a nice, fun, happy place.
Yeah, definitely. How did you go about, like, what's your mindset then going into like training and stuff like that to get to create that atmosphere?
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, you know, the first consideration is like, well, what does the guest want? You know, like if I was coming there, what would I want? And so training like staff how to make drinks fast and things like that, that's important. But training staff on how to engage with their guests on an emotional level and build that rapport, you know, whether it's like taking a second to sit down next to the table, you know, and looking them in the eye and learning their names. And then we have regulars who come back who, you know, obviously we know like their whole family and they've all come in and they keep like bringing new friends because they love the place. And it's because of that constant upkeep of like our relationship and learning more about them and letting them know that you are special, you know, as like to us, and like, you know, you've shown us a lot of love, and with that comes like familiarity.
Yeah, definitely. It's like building a community of customers without like, I don't know how to, like, so for example, like if you have a group of friends, you try to build that community, and that vibe that you have in Herbert is the exact same vibe that you have outside with your friends.
Yeah.
Which is like really hard to create.
Yeah, it's getting there for sure. I think like it's becoming a space which is really positive, and you can see that it's reflecting on multiple aspects of it. And
yeah, I definitely think you guys are on the pulse when it comes to new age management on how to deal with your employees / being a better employer, rather than the old school way of like, I'm the employer, you like want this job, so I have all the power and you don't have any power at all.
Well, that just leads to people quitting. Like, that's the thing. It's like, you can do that, and that's like, more power to you. But people quit, and then you've got to hire new people, and it takes more time and more money to train them up to be as good as the people who left. And so you're on this like constant downward spiral of just going, okay, well, if I'm like, oh, you do my job, blah, 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 I pay you, and then they quit. It's like, fuck, now I got to do twice as much work training the next person up because he just ditched me.
It's such a nightmare.
Nah.
When you were 18, did you go straight into working in bars?
No, I started when I was 15.
15?
Yeah, I started working 15, got a real lucky break, got a job at Sales Restaurant on Hastings Street in Noosa.
Yeah.
And I basically started, I was just a glassy. And then one day, the coffee maker guy, the barista, he didn't show up. And they were like, Alex, do you know how to make coffee? And I got given this little crash course, which was like, okay, steam the milk like this, and then, pour it in, and yada, yada, yada. And in that day, I was like, okay, cool. Like, this is a really good opportunity. Don't let this slip. Like, every coffee you make needs to be better than the previous one. And then from that day onwards, I wasn't cleaning dishes, and now I was making coffee.
You like the next step, like you start at the bottom and then you just keep like working your way up.
Man, that was crazy though, because like the owner, for some reason or another, he recognized something in me, and he was like notoriously mean to staff. Like he had made so many people upset during that time, but he just really liked me. It was super nice to me, and I got all of these perks and ended up like becoming the assistant manager of his wine bar, like at like 17.
That's crazy.
Like, who gets that opportunity and like paid at that position as well at 17?
Do you reckon that came like in your childhood and like growing up and stuff? Were your parents like really hard workers, and was it kind of like drilled into you to be like that, or
like, because we traveled around Australia in a bus, and then like they were on the dole for like I mean, they both got like legitimate jobs, right? Like my mum's a teacher, but like they were traveling and they were just like full-fledged dole bludgers.
so just full called them out. Bro, they're no hopers, man. They're like, no,
I mean,
shit.
I'm pretty impressed because they used to like, they'd be like, oh yes, I'm applying for a job up in Darwin and we're in Margaret River, like just got to drive up there now, and it was all sweet.
That's so good.
You can't do that anymore. Now they're too onto you.
Yeah, it's pretty hard these days to, especially on the dole. Like they're like every day you got to go to a meeting about getting a job. Do you reckon like when you were, so were your parents like really creative, like in the bus and stuff? Were you doing it like, cause were you homeschooled or was it?
Yeah, homeschooled. Obviously my mum's a teacher, so like.
Well, that would make sense, yeah.
But then, we did heaps of hiking, like hiking and seeing places and like climbing stuff, and not so much like arts and crafts, maybe a little bit, but it's weird. Like I've been inventing drinks now. Like I invented my first drink when I was like 6.
Really?
And then like I used to make this drink for my whole family. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm making drinks for everyone. And like, I've been doing that for like forever, like I figured out how to carbonate ice when I was like 10. And then like years later, I reflected on that and was like, that is so like, what a strange thing for a child to figure out who's going to have a job in these aspects, for those like little things to be so prevalent at that age.
Yeah, that's like, It's pretty crazy to think how young people's minds work. I was talking to this about with Jai, like one of the guests that came on before.
Yeah.
It's kind of similar. I was talking about like 3-year-olds that are dropping in on like 8-foot quarter pipes at the skate park.
Yeah.
I'm like, what possesses a child at that age to be doing something like that? And I guess you could reflect it back to what you were just talking about. Like, what would make you want to carbonate ice at the age of 10?
Yeah.
Like,
it's, man, it's so mental.
It's just this is what I like try to get out in the podcast, is that don't like cherish like children's minds and like cherish their creativity, because you're like a prime example of like where it's led to, and how if you actually just look after you or like nurture the idea and how how they're using their creative flair. Like you just never know what could potentially happen down the track.
Yeah. I think like definitely exploring imagination and creativity with children and letting them feel really safe within that is really important. But I think like doing what you want, like that's huge. There's so many people like work jobs in which like their actions are completely dictated by somebody else. And there's something really nice about like standing up for what you want in your life and just being like, nah, you know, sure, I'll get paid less or whatever else, but like that's not what I want. That's not the direction I want to go.
Yeah, I definitely think it's like a fine balance between doing what you really love and then like, or it depends. So for example, for me, it's like I want to have financial stability, but I also want to do what I want. Like this podcast doesn't pay me any money at the moment. So for me to
give it time.
Yeah, it's like, do I go on the dole and just go full-fledged podcast?
Yeah, just keep moving your like podcast to different states and you'll
just keep bouncing around. Well,
this week
on
Creative Appetites, we are in Melbourne and I am looking for a job.
Just start using this as a platform to try find work. just like, just like, no.
Please, by the way,
please
you
help.
don't happen to have any positions available at Herbert, do you?
Just start getting guests on. You guys got any jobs going at the moment? I'm desperate. But yeah, I definitely, life is such a weird place to operate in, especially as you become an adult.
Yeah.
Because like this is what I really struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of people struggle with, is like this whole narrative of like, get a job, just have kids, just do this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, but that's so mundane and so boring. Like like when I was growing up, I just never wanted to do a normal job.
Yeah. And I guess like some people that resonates really strongly with, you know, some people are like, oh yes, like all I want is a consistent job, a family, and a house, you know? And if I have those three things, like, tick.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm like, if I put down like things that I want for my life, it's like, I want to go kayaking in Antarctica, you know? Like I want experiences. I could care less about physical objects.
I just would hate, well, this is just, again, this is all my opinion. So like if people do want that, then that's amazing. Like go for gold. Like I'll support anyone that if that's what they want. But for people like are similar to us, like my whole life growing up, I was like, I never want to do a normal job ever. Like, and the thought of doing a normal job makes me feel sick. And it just, and kind of funnily enough, like I fell into this podcast and all those experiences started to make sense. I was like, I never wanted to do a normal job. I was like, this isn't really a normal job, but I enjoy doing it. And then that way I can get people on to show people that you don't have to do a normal job. Like you don't, like all the guests that I have on, none of them are doing something, like sure enough, some of them are like just working a job to like still work on their creative side.
Yeah.
But they're still doing what they want to do in the creative world, which I think is, I don't know, I just want people to get out there and just fucking go and just chase it, because like it'll be gone. Like once you get old,
it's the
that's
only
it,
chance like you get. And it's funny, you get these like opportunities that just come along, and I find you just have to go like, okay, yep, you know, like with my drinks like flavor consulting work, you'd get these projects and someone would come along and like, you know, Wrigley's chewing gum will be like, hey, we heard about you from so-and-so. We want you to like develop the next flavor of chewing gum. And it's like, well, you know, how much do you know about chewing gum? Because like when I get that call, it's like I know zero, you know, like the same amount as you. And then to go from that, you could say to them like, oh, sorry, I know nothing about chewing gum. Like, I don't do that. Or you can say, yeah, sure, let's do it. Great. You know, this is the timeline. And then immediately start cramming and be like, okay, I need to learn everything that there is to know about chewing gum. Oh, man. You know, full on just like, you have a week to become professional and opinionated with good ideas in chewing gum.
Sit there confidently just like...
Yeah, for sure, man.
I've been working on this flavor for years. I'm so glad you contacted me.
Like kind of, yeah, it's mental. And then you leave that and then they'll be like, all right, cool. Let's talk about vanilla, you know? And then you just suddenly it's brutal.
Yeah.
It's brutal. But in that, you start to just learn more and more, and people recognize like, oh, wow, he's diverse and can actually like work within multiple parameters.
Yeah. Let's touch on that. Let's dive into the flavour consulting, because I don't think many people would know about it.
Yeah,
And
it's a bit of an odd one.
It is an oddball job, but it sounds, every time we talk about it, I always get so excited because there's just so much that you just keep coming out with. So how did you fall into it, and where did it start?
I was 21. I was working at this 5-star hotel in London called the Town Hall Hotel. It's in East London. These two guys came in, and I just spent the last 3 years studying under this tea master, learning like the Chinese tea ceremony, the Japanese tea ceremony, different styles of gong fu cha, and like heavy on tea. Had like a real tea moment. Got super into it, and like when I mean super into it, like crazy amounts. I have like teapots, these little teapots that are like this big that cost like $1,000 each, and it's like a little teapot, and you can only make one type of tea in it. I got like real invested.
Like walking around with like a briefcase.
Yeah.
Like
Honestly, like however you're imagining, it's probably worse than that. And so these two guys come in, and I give them the menu, and during that period, I used to say, look, here's the menu, but to be honest with you, I'd prefer to talk to you, find out what you're into, and I'll make a drink based around that, or like how you're feeling. And so these two guys were looking for some talent to start this thing in Nestle and Coca-Cola called the Inspiration Team. And so they're looking for tea people for this tea project. And so, sure enough, they go, oh, do you have anything with tea in it? And I'm like, tea? I love tea. I've got like 3,000 recipes. Yeah, pull out the briefcase, let them know how serious I am about tea. And then so I make them 2 drinks, which I knew were bangers, and they had them, and then they're like, oh, can we have 2 more? And so they had 2 different ones again, and then suddenly they're like, hey, we want you to, sit down, and we want to talk to you about this opportunity. So then I joined the Inspiration Team, and then the Inspiration Team had a worst title. We are the Inspiration Team. Excuse me, I'm here to inspire.
It's like God turn up.
Inspiration Team assemble.
Little bow ties just turn up with suitcases full of tea.
So yeah, Inspiration Team consistently gets like smaller and smaller until it's just me. And then suddenly I'm having like lots of brands within like the Nestle group and within the Coca-Cola group. And then suddenly like other groups, people just asking me to do stuff, and so I'm just traveling from country to country, flying around with just different random projects, from like reinventing vanilla ice cream to like finding out what the perfect strawberry is, like just real crazy stuff, consistently moving around. And then I just started, getting a reputation within that of being quite diverse. And so that led me to like, hosting seminars at the World Trade Centers in like Amsterdam. What? All of this, started from a kid who just wanted to make like drinks for his family. But I guess like during that process, it's just been me following what I want to do and just kind of having fun and getting punished along the way.
I think it's like such a prime example of like just following your dreams and like, or just following in intuition, so to speak. Because like if you think about like literally what we were just talking about, like the normal job.
Yeah.
That job is so not normal and so abnormal to like the everyday person. Like I didn't know anything about it until you and I spoke about it off the air.
Yeah.
Hot air. Woo, let's go. But yeah, so it's just like following the steps and just open and chasing the opportunities that are presented to you will lead you anywhere.
At least keeping an open eye for like, there's an opportunity there. Am I going to take it or am I not going to take it? And if I don't take it, will I regret it? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, well, then you should probably take it.
Yeah.
But that kind of started, I was in high school and I was my last year of high school and I was loving bartending and I wanted to quit school and focus on bartending. And so I talked to my parents about it. And their answer was, we think you should finish high school, get the certificate, and then you can keep bartending. And their whole philosophy was always like, you make your own decisions, but you've got to deal with the consequences as well. And so I went there against their advice and focused on bartending. And like, even now I have this feeling like here that's like, you got to make this work, you know? Like, and I've spoken to them and they're like, dude, we're like super proud. Like you've done well.
Not enough.
Yeah. And I still feel like, man, you got to prove to them that you made the right decision and you got to own it.
I feel like I'm in that predicament right now with this decision that we were talking about off camera.
Yeah.
It's like, if I don't, like, my family's the traditional side of like, you need to do this, follow this. Like, if I turn around and told them I'm just quitting my job and I'm just going to go full-time podcast, they would think I have rocks in my head. They'd be like, you are crazy. So, like, there's always this burning intrinsic motivation to, like, not let anything get in the way of, like, what I always wanted to do. And I think that's, like, followed me my whole life with everything I've ever done. Yeah. Because I've always wanted to be creative, but I've always been, like, stuck with this, like, burning old school, like, you need to fucking do this, you need to do that. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like,
you exist within this model.
Like, I'd like somewhat half tell my parents I didn't want to do like a normal job, and they just look at you like a blank stare, like you're some crazy person. Like, what do you mean? What's not a normal job? Like, what are you gonna do? And I'm like, I don't know yet, but like I'll know. I'll know when it happens. Like, get off my back. But and I think a lot of people would struggle with that. Like, it's such a. But I don't know. I just think.
And then so like if you've got your parents and they're like giving you this negative direction of like, well, we think you should go this way, and then your heart's going like, oh, I really want to like go this way. Like, what do you do?
Yeah, there are like a couple of different things you can do that I've just along the way I've picked up. And there's like the safe way, which is like getting a job that will provide you income to keep a roof over your head, and then you put all your energy into your like creative stuff, or you just go full noise, quit your job, and just go full risk.
Yeah, and I even wonder about the creative stuff. Like, I think sometimes a hobby is better left as a hobby than as a job. You know what I mean? Like, once you start being like, oh, wow, I got to pay rent, and then I got this stuff, member, and like managing all of the stress and like financial aspects of it, it's like you can lose like part of the fun.
Yeah, I think there's just so many like different ways you can do it. But like I was saying before, like there are some things that should be left as a hobby at the start, because some, like, if you go full noise, you would just end up hating it, and then you could potentially just lose something that could have been creative, like really great. Yeah. If you just managed your situation a little bit better.
Yeah. And I guess like not letting people taint your vision of what you want. You know, like I wanted to make this pop-up cocktail bar in London, and I had like all of these blocks coming up that were like, you know, you can't do this, or licensing because you need this license, and then the licenses were super expensive and you could only get like X amount per year. So then like you couldn't do that, and like the only way I could do it was either if I spent like a huge amount of money and got a permanent license for this establishment, or if I made I had no license, I made all of the drinks free. And so like opening a bar where everything's free, it's like, and then you hope that people will like
just donate money.
Yeah. And you go like, okay, well, like I hope this works out. But like the crazy thing during that process is people actually left more money than if they would have paid for the drinks themselves. So it was actually like more profitable to make everything free than it was to like pay for all the legal stuff. And I think there's something really cool within that, because if you told 9 out of 10 people you were going to make a bar where everything is free, and then you're like, do you think this is going to be an economical, like viable business? And they're just going to look at you like, are you serious? But it's ultimately like your approach and how like your audience responds to what you do. And so like there's always going to be people saying like, nah, no way. There's no way that's possible. But like all of my life, I've found that these like crazy situations come up and these opportunities happen, and you've just got to be like, okay, yes, but you got to do it with a good attitude. Like that's the key.
For sure. Yeah.
And like during that process, you're going to get punished. Like it's not going to be like, yes. And then everything is like, and like perfect, you know, you're just like getting high fives down the street. But through in that suffering, like it works. And suddenly you're like, wow, I can't believe that actually, you know, I can't believe we actually pulled that off, you know?
Where did you get the confidence to come, like, obviously you're very creative and you can come up with all these ideas, but they're not the traditional sense of ideas where like you would, like you were saying, you wouldn't go and just start a bar that's for free. So where do you get the where did this confidence come from to just follow through with your ideas and just keep pushing and still keep it together, even obviously when it's going to get stressful? And
when I was younger, I used to be like really shy. Like I still am, but I've learnt all of these like mechanisms to help me deal with being like really shy, particularly around like audiences and people. And a big one for me was like 3, 2, 1, go, right? And it's like you just go 3, 2, 1, go. And when you say go, you just have to do it. And there's no like you can't turn back. There's no nothing. It's like jumping off a cliff. It's you just got to go. You got to make that first step, and then once you've done that first step, then you deal with the new stuff. But yeah, I think basically just accepting it and being like, okay, this is going to be scary and this is going to be stressful and all of this stuff's going to happen, but like we're doing it.
is that how you got over to London?
I guess so. I see that as like a really easy thing. I think some people are like, wow, you went to London when you're 18, but like I moved out of home when I was 16, so I was already like self-sufficient and like, you know, doing my own cooking and laundry and everything.
Strong, independent woman.
Oh yeah. Came my way. Man, that 16 to 18 bracket, that was like the craziest time of my life because I was getting paid like silly money for my age plus like tips. So I was making like, I don't know, like 1,100, 1,200 a week.
What?
As like a 17-year-old living outside of home. So like I pay my rent, you know, and then it's like, then I just got money. And we used to do heaps of silly stuff. Like we walked into KFC one time and I was like, oh, who's the manager here? And this guy's like, yeah, me. I'm like, I bet you $50 you can't make a burger look like the burger in the picture. And if it doesn't, then I get the burger for free. And like just stuff like that, like just cheeky little shit. Like,
and I got confidence. Just like,
I'm 17. I drink Belvedere.
On Alizé, which is funny because it's such a cheap drink. Everyone's like, Alizé.
I love that. I don't get it. I don't understand why everyone's like, yee, Alizé.
I don't understand it.
But then like Henny's not even that expensive.
No, although I have seen a $35,000 bottle of cognac.
Yeah, I mean, but that
was pretty expensive. But I was in Singapore, in the Singapore airport.
You don't want to buy airport alcohol.
I was like, I think, well, at the time, because I was working in the Navy, like similar situation, had no money growing up, like had to like make my own way everywhere, like buy my first car, like
yeah.
I got supported with the basics, like school clothes and stuff like that, but everything else is like, you got to get a job. So I think I've had a job since I was 13 and a half. Like I've pretty much worked my whole life. There's only like,
what was your first job?
My first job, I was working at a pub restaurant.
Sick.
And then
what'd you do?
I was working in the kitchen, like helping do it. Like I was super shy as well, actually. Like didn't want to go out, and like I have like social anxiety when it comes to like in pubs for some reason. So like I couldn't go out and like give the meal to someone. Like I'd get hell freaked out. I'd be like, oh, just like
forks falling off.
Legit.
Oh jeez.
And then I worked at a Chinese restaurant.
That would have been sick.
It was pretty funny. Like it was a pretty interesting experience because the only time I ever got in trouble was when they were speaking like Cantonese or whichever one they spoke. And it was always so funny because it'd be like full blown Cantonese, and then the only word that wasn't was Jesse. So like, Jesse. I was just like, oh man, I must be in trouble again for doing something stupid.
Wouldn't it be nice if they were just like singing your praise? It's like,
yeah, it could have been.
Of all of the staff who work here, who's your favorite? Oh, it's gotta be Jesse. Like,
I had to do so much other external work for that like that restaurant as well. Like I went and cleaned out. He had these like heaps of birds. So I had to like clean out these massive bird aviaries.
Like what type of like
yeah, like
fancy birds?
Yeah, like fancy bird, like big, like pretty much half the size of this office was just full of bird aviaries. It was bizarre.
So you've been a bird keeper like as a job.
Yeah.
While you were working
Unknowingly.
at a Chinese restaurant. Sick.
And then, yeah, I've just done heaps of other stuff. But same thing, like when I joined the Navy, I had like, it was all this money coming in. And I was like, oh, I can just do whatever I want. So we were just going out like splashing money on like just real dumb shit, like buying clothes, like buying like brand new push bikes and like motorbikes and just, I was like, what am I doing with myself? And now that I don't have much money anymore, I was like, man, I wish I knew.
Come on, bro.
I wish I knew.
Damn it. Who would have thought being poor?
I think being poor actually makes you,
Oh, being poor is the best.
I think, yeah, you learn how to survive and off very little.
I think like if you can live in like abject poverty, but not like treat yourself as if you're financially poor, but not actually be poor, then you're like, we did this like bike ride around Europe. So it's like 16,000 Ks living in a tent. And we gave ourselves €5 each day to live off, which like can be done like easy.
Yeah.
And you actually eat like pretty well. But it means like, for example, chocolate. Like you just don't buy chocolate because you can't afford chocolate. Like it's just not.
Just don't buy the niceties.
Yeah, it's not within like, you know, every now and then you can buy yourself a beer. But one of the things we did is when we'd reach certain places, we'd go like, okay, we're going to go out for like a really nice lunch. And like my friend who I was traveling with, because my company sponsored this trip, they'd be like, if you hold back or don't order something because you're concerned about how much we've spent at this lunch, then like I'll be really upset. Like the whole idea of this lunch is like have everything that you want. You know?
So this was, so when you were traveling on a bike with your friend,
Yeah.
you were also working as a mixologist,
Yeah,
I mean,
flavor consultant.
flavor consultant.
Yeah,
Switch-
so what would happen is like I'd get a project and then I'd fly from wherever we were. I'd lock up my bike at the airport and ditch all my tent and stuff in some forest. And then I'd fly to like whatever country I needed to be in, do the work, and then fly back, get my tent, get my stuff, and then just continue.
So like the only time you would actually indulge is when you were going to these like meetings.
No,
and
no, no,
stuff.
no, no. No, the like
Oh, so
actually
you're saying like when you were traveling on your bike with your
so
friend.
we were poor. We couldn't afford chocolate. But occasionally, like less than once a month. So
That's
like
crazy.
we would go to these like restaurants and we'd like I'd pick out somewhere awesome and we'd have these meals that'd be like a €300 lunch. And it's like, you know, you'd be like this is delicious. Oh yeah. Another glass of wine. And then you're like, yep, let's get one more pizza, and like just constant food flowing and trying different stuff. And
So how did you,
it makes you appreciate, like, because you've been so poor, when you have something really nice. And if you like go like really nice, you're sitting there just like, yes.
so when you were 17 working as this assistant manager at this bar,
Yeah.
what was the next, where did you go from there?
So this guy came in, and he was talking about the best bartenders in the world. And he was like, the best bartenders in the world either come from London or New York. And prior to that, I'd met this guy called, his name, I don't know his real name, but his name's Rocky. And he's like 4 times world bartender champion. And I met him and he came to my school. I don't know how I met him, but I met him. And then I got his details and then I started like learning about like bartending, and he gave me a bunch of books. And then suddenly I was looking at my options when I was approaching being 18. And it was either like, I just wanted to be really good at making drinks. And so it's either London or New York, and New York I couldn't drink in. So then it was moved to London. Got involved with a group called Match, which at the time were like the real world leading bar group, particularly in training. Like they were second to none. And so I spent like a lot of time with them learning all these different procedures and how to make drinks efficiently. And then kind of left there because I felt it was too like blocked on creativity.
Yeah,
And
like
so-
run its course kind of thing.
Well, like they're really good. Though their training model and everything was super good, but you never really got to invent your own drinks, and everything was kind of so much, because it's a group, you needed to have like widely accessible ingredients. So making your own stuff was kind of not really an option.
Yeah.
And that's definitely where I wanted to go with it, was like start making my drinks instead of other people's.
So then where did you go after you left?
I tried a few different places and I wasn't like super happy with them. And then I got a job at the hotel that I told you about.
Yeah.
And so I worked there and then I left there because I wanted to learn about, after tea, I wanted to learn about coffee. And I met this guy called Andrew Tolley, who's like one of the judges of the World Barista Championships. And he has a series of cafes which kind of the same deal as the bars. It's like their training was just impeccable. So then I went to learn about coffee, and then that hotel asked me to come back as a consultant and do their cocktail list. And then that's when consulting kind of started, and then the whole side career. Just like
It's so crazy how you've just had this run of like interesting, like everything's been interesting the whole time.
man, you're just riding a wave. It's
Yeah.
like shit just happens and you go like, oh, okay, cool. So we're doing this now.
What was your first experience like when you, like, because I have no idea about this consulting stuff, so I'm just finding this super interesting. So when, like, your first experience of when you, I don't know, had to make a drink or come up with a recipe or something like that, how did that go?
Well, so I got scouted, and then they were like, you know, what's your day rate? And I'm 21, and I'm from like 100 population town in the middle of the sticks, and so I'm like, like 200 pounds, maybe that. And the guy like looked at me, he's like, no, we're not going to pay you anything less than 500 pounds a day, which is like $1,000, and like that moment was like, oh wow, like that's awesome, but also there's like that responsibility. It's like you've got to be worth that much. What you produce has to have that caliber, otherwise you're done. And this whole side thing's over. So then I started getting involved with these projects, and we had to make these different things and learn about like sending samples to different countries. And the first time I traveled overseas and I met, they're called flavorists. So they're employed by these flavor houses, and they're like multiple PhD people with like chemistry backgrounds. They make all of the flavors for everything, like everything.
That'd be a cool job.
Yeah, but they're hardcore. Like they're like the black belt ninjas of like taste. Like
Right.
no, like crazy.
If you were in that job, how could you ever enjoy anything after that? Because you would have such a higher standard of like tasting stuff.
Now, I think they're just like, they go like a step above, Like I was once with this flavorist, and we're in this bar, and we ordered 2 drinks, and I'm like, like, how's yours? And she's like, oh, mine's good. And then she tastes mine, and then she asked for like a new glass, and then she takes both of them and just goes, and just tips them into one glass, which like, if I like as a bartender, I would have been like, well, it's like, it's a bit rude. But then she made this drink, and it was like way better. It was way better than like both of them, And like she let the bartender taste, and he obviously agreed. Like it was unanimous that like this was a better drink. They're hardcore.
That's like baller status. That's when you're just at the elite.
Oh man, honestly,
Like,
like
give me that.
the moment that I met my first flavorist, the gap between me and them was so obvious that like I was like 21 and pretty cocky. And I met them and was like, oh, like I've got like, I was like,
They're like the senseis of like
instantly put me in my place. Like, wow, okay, cool. I have so much to learn, and like, I've got to be better. I've got to be so much better because these guys are like killing it.
Did you study with them after that?
They have training that they do, particularly on like sensory stuff. So you'll have like one, like an aroma chemical, and then they'll have 10 strips in order of strongest to weakest, and they'll jumble it up, and then you have to put them back into the order of like most intensity. And then that then teaches you to understand like how many milligrams of like something has in it.
Yeah.
So they can like smell stuff and basically write the recipe out of that, be like, oh yes, like 0.38 milligrams of this, and then like you like really
like real fine,
really accurate, and like taste and smell are so subjective, but they're kind of not. We just like to think they are. Like there are for sure. Like there's like certain smells that some people can smell and some people cannot, and like so, it's definitely subjective. And there's a whole lot of like emotional attachment to different smells, but ultimately like your receptors can only be so sensitive, and you can like train them.
That just gets me so excited because I don't like this. Is like one of the best things about having this podcast. Like you just get to chat to everyone and learn all this new stuff.
Yeah.
I remember I saw one thing about like Joe Rogan in hot water right now. But anyway, someone was just like, I think he said it. It was like he just gets to talk to all these different people and like learn so much.
Yeah.
And it's so exciting. Like when you get to chat to someone, like I had no idea about a flavorist. Like if I was at a bar and someone came up to me and was like, yeah, I'm a flavorist, I would laugh. Because we used to run around in the Navy and tell people we were dolphin trainers.
Yeah, sick.
So I was like, I'll just be like, oh, he's just taking the piss. But it's like a legit full job.
Dolphin trainer.
Dolphin trainer.
Man, now there is a job that you could like retire on.
It'd be the best job. Just gonna cruise around, train dolphins.
You'd kill it like any job interview. What was your previous job? I was a dolphin trainer. You got the job.
You got the job. The only job on your resume. That's it. Just dolphin.
But at multiple venues, so it's like, wow, you have like no computer skills. Your handwriting's terrible, but you did used to train dolphins. So yep, you got the job. Your story checks out.
So what countries did this job take you to? Like how many countries have you been to now?
I think I've been to like 52 countries. The job probably took me to like 20.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like all over Europe for sure. Yeah. And then I guess with that, I got to travel. Like when I first started, I'd fly to a country, do my work, and then fly back. And then I felt like, I'm not really getting any time to see the country. Plus, like, I'd go there, work, come back, work, and then I'd go back to work. So I was like, my free time's getting... So then I'd be like, okay, if I go to a country for work, I want, like, 2 days there. That way I can, like, prepare for the meeting, have everything set up, yada, yada. And they were like, yeah, sure, okay, cool. So then I get paid for those days. And then I spent a lot of time in hotels. And I don't know if, like, you stayed in many hotels?
Yeah.
I hate hotels, man.
I've traveled a fair bit.
They're the worst. And like people who drink in hotel bars are like even worse.
I've always wondered that. I've really like pondered on that thought about people going to hotel bars to drink. And like usually they're like all business people.
It's all business and it's all like, first of all, like a dick swinging competition. And then also like, I'm here to talk about me. It's weird, man. Like they'll be like, what do you do? Well, let me tell you what I do. And you're like...
Yeah, before you even get... They're like, so you're like, what do you do? And they're like, hey, never mind. Actually, this is what I do.
Yeah. And so then I got real... Like I used to like... Because they'd put me up in 5-star hotels. And I'd just be like, get drunk and come back to my room. And then I'd take all the furniture and just like assemble it in these like real fucked up sculptures and like take like every towel and like tie them over and make like little favelas and stuff and just like
rock star stuff, not like, being damaging, but just like shifting the whole fucking room.
Really like trashing the room. And then I was like, I realized that I hate hotels. And then so
I don't know who would enjoy them though.
They're terrible. And then so I started like I stayed at a couple of hostels and I had a way better time. And like I just organized my own private room in a hostel. But then like you go down and you'd be like, hey, what's the cool places in town? And these guys are like, you got to go like here, here, and here. And you got people to talk to, and there's people your same age. And so I ended up getting, like, working out that I'll be like, I want, like, a budget for my accommodation. And then I'd have, like, like 300 or 400 euros for this hotel. And then I'd just go spend, like, 30 euros and go stay at a hostel.
Yeah, so how does that work? So are you like a subcontractor? So you just work for yourself kind of thing?
Yep. So a company in the UK called Fraction Flavors. And then, basically wherever I needed to go, I would just fly there, find out what exactly my client needed, because it's weird as a consultant. It's really easy to think about like, oh, okay, cool, like, you know, I'm going to do me and they're paying for my opinion and yada yada yada, and kind of it's like easy to get a inflated ego about that. But really, like, all you are is just suspension. It's like somebody wants something, you're there to absorb all of the bumps until they get what they want. Yeah. And that's your job. It's just to absorb those bumps and whatever that might be.
Do you just assist in guiding them to the flavor that they're looking for?
Yeah. And so you set up the parameters on how you're going to like help them. But like ultimately that's all you're there to do, is to like get them from point A to point B as smoothly as possible.
Was there any experience that you had throughout that whole time where you just really couldn't work with someone? Like it was just like they were just too intense?
I got this. So of the two guys who found me, one of them, his name is Flavio, and he's like one of the most like special people in my life, and he is
Flavio.
Yeah, Flavio is the boss.
That's a sick name.
Flavio Poli, right?
I feel like I need to name my child Flavio.
Oh man, he is like so intense, like he's like James Bond. Like that's his intensity. Like he's super good looking as well, but he's like really like super sharp. And we'd be doing these like presentations at World Trade Centers or whatever, talking about things, and he would just, because he employed me a lot, he'd ask me, like, he'd be like to the group, you know, oh yeah, that's really interesting, Alex, can you just explain how that process works? And it's like, oh, and he'd put me on the spot, and he'd consistently like put me in these scenarios like, wow, that's like, yes, of course I will, sick, let's just do that. Okay, so the basics of thermodynamics, or like,
Really love this.
yeah, but
do you reckon that's like helped you now though, within your, like with Herbert and stuff like that? Do you think that because you've been put in those tough situations in probably like a high pressure environment, that you can handle dealing with like drunk customers and all that kind of jazz?
I think it's given me this like almost abnormal belief in myself, where it's like, I think that you can essentially do like anything. All you got to do is do it. Like it's...
Yeah, I definitely get that vibe. Like you do have that, even when I speak to you, like when we hang out, I'm like, man, I can do anything.
But
like,
you
I'm
can.
just gonna like...
You fully can.
Yeah, 100%.
And like, I feel like my life is proof of that. It's like all along the way, there's been these obscene challenges that like came with like things, but in the end of the day, you just got to do it. And like, that you either do it or you don't do it, right? And so you just, I don't know, it's really hard to explain. It's like if you wanted to become an astronaut and you were like, man, I want to become an astronaut, but like as if that's ever going to happen. It's like you fully could. If you started out right now, you could make it into space. It'd be like super hard, but you could definitely do it, and it's not impossible.
Yeah, I think you just need to have the willingness to try and just get started. Like I say this all the time, and it's like if you just take the first step, and when it doesn't, like, I don't know, the steps can be multiple different things. Like for me, it could be like making my bed in the morning every morning, or having a cold shower. Like it doesn't have to be the step as in what you would normally think, as in like, right, I need to go contact NASA, I need to contact. So no. Start like way back at the start, and get you yourself prepared in a way that you feel strong enough that if all else fails, you can handle the kickback. And then you go to the next step and go, okay. And then through that, you just keep going.
It's like taking a little snowball at the top of a mountain, right? It's like all that it takes is that first little, and then once you've got that, it'll start to take momentum, and it'll get bigger and more complex, and it'll grow and grow and grow. But if you don't do that first little throw, then like it never happens. And I find that a lot of people with projects, they're like, oh yeah, but I really just want to get it perfect before I start. It's like, it's never going to be perfect. You've just got to start making it, and once you start making it, you can improve it. But like, it's way better to have something that is even like poorly made, but that you've made it, than to be still considering how to make it perfect.
Yeah, I think I think just cutting that whole perfect thing out of your mindset straight away is a good thing to do. Like for me, or even with Izzy, who runs Jolly Femme, she's like, she when she was talking about like her business model, she was like, I had everything structured out, and like I'm really really well structured, whatever, and like that really worked for her. But then like me with this podcast, I was like, I have no idea. I was like, I kind of just winged it all, and now I'm like here. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so funny to see how people like what avenue they take.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the big things I want people to take away from this podcast is in 20 years' time, like if you were to come all the way back to the start, you could see the progression. Whether or not the progression is like I'm the biggest podcaster in the world, you could still like there's still something you can take away from it. It's like just getting started, and this person's just gone out, had nil experience in podcasting at all.
Yep.
But just started, and just literally every step, like all these new things all these doors keep opening for me. Like I'm booked out with guests, like, or whatever it may be. But if you watch it in 5 years' time and you came all the way back to the start, you could see the progression.
Yeah, there's going to be growth.
Yeah, and
sure.
I want people to like not be inspired by that, but like just know that it's something to.
Yeah, you can use as like a reference point. Like,
yeah,
you know.
Like rather than coming out of nowhere and just being like, oh, this is the biggest podcast ever, but where did this person start? It's like you can literally watch it from the beginning and just see it grow and grow. And then your idea that you have at home, you're like, sick. Like I can do that too. And then you start, and then that grows and grows. And then it's like everyone's growing and doing exactly what they want to do rather than doing this mundane job that they hate.
Yeah. Like I don't know. I was talking to this guy. I was in Pisa in Florence. No, Florence. Yeah. Anyway, I was at Pisa, and we met this young guy. I can't remember his name, but he wanted to travel to America, and he wanted to be a videographer, and his dad wanted him to be a doctor, and he was very conflicted about this. And I told him the story of my life, and basically said, you know, like I've just been following whatever I want to do. And I've had these really amazing, fortunate moments, but every lucky moment that I've had has been met with like a really good attitude. And he says in like really broken English, he goes, so a good attitude is the foundation of luck. And that just like blew my mind. It's like, that's exactly right. You know, like if you have a bad attitude, you're going to get bad luck.
That just blew my mind. I was like,
it is
mad.
Yeah. And so I think like that's paramount. Like whatever you do, if you can do that with a good attitude, you're laughing. Because even like whatever you're doing, even if it doesn't yield super amazing results, it's like you're having a good time while you're doing it, and you can take like pride and enjoyment in that.
Yes. I think it also comes down to like manifesting the idea or understanding what manifesting is.
Yeah.
Like for you, it's probably like you always wanted to do this like consulting, like flavor consulting stuff. Or maybe not wanted to do flavor consulting, but you wanted to work in bars and you wanted to do like travel. And
I've just been riding the wave.
And yeah, like once you're on the wave, it's like doors just keep opening. You're like, all right, let's go that way. Let's go that way. Let's go that way. And you just keep going and
you
going.
Stay on it.
Yeah.
And like some of them, you know, like I got this really amazing job where I was like employed to be the head of like creative research for this $5 million hotel, like where you'd have Oprah sitting next to like Robert Downey Jr. and like super celebrity paparazzi always out the front. And they put me on to like consult and develop all of their beverage platforms. And then eventually like that just didn't happen. And I just did like nothing. Like I had nothing. I was like, I just walk around and like drink tea and chill. And
Wait, so you're working at this place?
Yeah.
And just doing
for so long, and I was getting paid so much, and
Just
I
acting.
did nothing.
walking around with a hard
Like,
hat and like a hard
no,
hat
like-
with a clipboard, just like, oh, I'm
Like-
important.
Like this one day, I'm in the private members bar and I'm playing piano as I'm sipping tea, and then like the owner of the hotel, who I'd never met before, who like everyone tells me he's like really mean, he comes in. And I'm like, well, you know, shouldn't be here. This is
playing
bad.
Beethoven.
Yeah. And then he's like, no, sit down. sit down. Can I get you a glass of wine? You know? And I was like, in my head, you know, is he like sincere or is he being facetious, you know? And I was like, I'm too deep. I'm too deep to turn back.
Roll with it.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, I'd love a glass of red. Like, and so he comes back with like this stupidly expensive bottle of red and pours me a glass, and he goes, yeah, me and my friends are having a meeting. If you can just play some background music. So I'm sitting there and like other managers will just walk in and see me and see him, and I'm like, you know, this is what he wants me to do. But one day they're like, Alex, it's time.
You gotta go.
You've had a good ride, and I was super okay with that. Like,
oh, you'd never be upset. You'd be like, yeah.
Like, I was like, dude, I've been like, you know, I've been chilling for so long, and this day was always coming.
It was just when. It was like it was gonna happen.
Such a good job.
I have this like theory. Oh, it's not a theory. I always keep saying I have this theory. I don't know why. They're not theories. They're thoughts.
Hypothesis.
That one. So, something I learned throughout the Navy, and it took me quite a while, is at the start, I was always nervous of people in power, like in management, supervisors, or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And then what I learned over time was that these people are still humans, and if you actually be over like happy and you just forcefully say hello to them,
mm-hmm.
it kind of like breaks the barrier between like this different shift in power, and then they start actually relaxing. So when I was on a boat, the captain, everyone's always scared of the captain. Everyone's like, the captain's this, or you can't say hello to him. Every time he would come up, like one captain in particular, really mad on coffee. And I always used to bring like specialty coffee on the boat. Yeah. Like a real snob that I was. And I used to cop like all this shit from all these other sailors. But
Aeropress.
Yeah. I was like, oh.
How many microns is that filter, Jesse?
And then one morning he comes up and he goes, what is that smell? And like, this is before I could even see him.
Yeah.
I just like turned around and I was like, specialty coffee, big dog. Like, and you never ever call him like, you're just like, yes sir, no sir. I was legit like, I was like, specialty coffee, big dog. I was like, well, you want some, son? I was like, I'll run down there and make you one. He goes, oh mate, I'd love one. So I'm like, literally, like, and then ever since then, it like broke that barrier because you like you bring them down to a human level where they're just like, they're not.
You can engage with them.
And then you joke with them the whole time. And everyone's always like, what are you doing? You're sucking up his ass. It's like, no, you're just too scared to say something.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you break that barrier, they actually look at you like a human instead of like a number.
Yeah. I find the same in like a lot of, like in a lot of hospitality, there's like bullying. And there's people who have these positions and like, you do this, blah, 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 blah. And if you're just like, no, fuck off, then they're like, oh, fair enough. And then like after that, they're just like, cool, I can't fuck with you. Like, that's okay. And they'll just stop and be really nice to you. And all you have to do is go like, no.
Yeah, they just...
And then like, oh, okay, cool. I realized that I'm not going to like go out of my way to try and challenge you. Like, cool. For a sweet high five, you know?
So where did it leave you after this flavour consulting job? Where did you end up? What was the next job after that?
So I've been in London now for 10 years. I've got my British citizenship. I've launched a bunch of companies over there. Consulting's gone really interesting. Bartending's gone really interesting. And I was pretty over London. Like at this stage, I was like, I don't want to be here any longer. So I wanted to move to New York. And I was about to start a new project with a friend of mine there, James Truman, who just super talented, creative guy, real amazing, like really solid, nice, all-rounded person. And so I wanted to start a project with him. So I came back to Australia. I wanted to spend like a year or so in Australia, chilling with my family, and then I was going to move there. And then I was doing like the organizing for my visa for the States. COVID happened. Like 4 days before I was supposed to get on a plane, they locked the borders. And suddenly, like, everything that I've worked towards suddenly is like, you know, out of reach. And that was real challenging because it's then like, okay, I'm feeling a lot of like blocks from the universe. Oh, I can't go over here. This is it. So I took a second and I looked around. And then the opportunity for Herbert popped up, and it was like such a insanely favorable opportunity. Like our landlord is just the best person ever. And so it was like, okay, am I ready to open a restaurant? Not really, like, not really. But like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And then like during the build, I think I was pulling like consistent 100-hour weeks and constantly like every day something would, we had asbestos in the ceiling, we had asbestos in the floor. Like we had so many challenges with this build. And every day, be like, the plumbers are like, well, where's your plumbing plans? And like, I'm like, oh, I've never designed a plumbing plan before, but like, sure, And then so I like make up some like digital illustrations of, that, and then like, yep, cool, great. And then you're like, suddenly someone's like, well, I need your electrical plans. And then suddenly you're like designing electrical plans, and then you're fitting stuff, and then just making decisions. Like it's such a overwhelming experience, and it's so involved that like the build process and picking out everything and having meetings and discussing and having something that you really want. Like we had so many arguments, me and Leon. Things like, we had like a full yelling argument as to whether the bar needed to be strong enough for people to stand on it. And it would like...
I would say that was your idea for people to stand on the
bar.
It
needs to be, like, in order to reach things, like, staff need to be able to stand on the bar. Like the...
Oh, I thought, like, Coyote Ugly shit, like, standing on the bar like that.
What's the soundtrack for that song?
Oh no. We're going to be stuck here trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Start singing Britney. But yeah, like honestly, was not prepared at all. Completely mental. Now, if I was to do a second one, I feel like I have a bit more of a grasp. But even then, like, there's just going to be constant chaos, and it's just dealing with problem after problem. And
how does your business relationship work with you and Leon?
I drive the creative stuff, and Leon takes care of the books and that aspect of it. I'm the creative director. He is the operations director.
And do you feel like because he does cover that, it allows you creative freedom to like think clearly?
We cover each other's weak spots really well.
Yeah.
Like I hate emails.
Same.
Like I consider it to be like a redundant form of communication.
I just like calling people straight.
Texts, man. An email is just text with fancy shit attached to it. It's such I feel like I don't want to go on a rant about emails, but like
I have this problem right now. It's like I was talking to my graphic designer, and he's like, "Oh, how are you going to contact these people through email?" I was like, "Oh, I might even just slide into their DMs." Like, I feel like it's so much easier just to like go around this whole like middleman route of the email. It's like, why can't I just message you directly? You just send me a message back, and then we know.
Yeah.
Rather than me going like, "Oh, if I have to like get someone with a manager."
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to waste time with your manager. You just tell me if you want to come on, and then come on. Like it's not that hard. Yeah, so I definitely think that just contacting them directly is so much better than dealing with emails. Like emails are so 90s as well. It's like
it is.
Surely we can move past that.
And you can also see like really big businesses are like adopting like communication platforms that are different from emails because it's just like it's such a fucking waste of time.
Well, you have to wait for them to reply.
And like not only that, but like you've got to shift through these formalities, and then previous emails, they have to have these formalities as well. So when you're trying to like find something that somebody has said, like in a chat thread, it's like, okay, there it is. But in emails, it's like,
yeah,
hello, I read this. Here are my thoughts regarding this, etc. And you're just like, oh.
It's such. When I was working in Sydney with the Navy, and I was kind of like operations manager of this job on one of the ships.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone else had the email thing going. They were like, we're just going to email. And I was like, I was so efficient because I just called everyone. I didn't waste time.
Calls, man.
I cut out every single middleman that I had to. And then I just literally had the number of every single person. Every time I had a drama, I just went boom, straight to the source.
Yep.
And I got shit done. Like shit was just getting done left, right and center. And they're like, man, you're so efficient. I was like, yeah, because I don't waste time.
Like the worst.
I just call people. I'm like, it's so much better.
We had a friend of mine. He's like, "Oh, bro, like I want to buy this camera, but the guy hasn't responded to me." And I'm like, "Just call him. Like, why are you waiting for a response when you can just be like, hello, yes, awesome, thank you." You know,
Done. It's
oh man, yeah, it gets me. But I wonder how you can, like, so say in say a restaurant or a bar or hospitality setting, where like email is used, but it's not the fundamental communication source. I wonder how like businesses, small businesses, can communicate with their staff on a platform that really encourages that without necessarily, because I think, you know, talking on Facebook Messenger, it's like, it's a bit informal, you know, but it would be nice still to have, you know, like if text message could like up the ante so that it's like, hey, you know, we can all talk about the same thing and like send each other notes and information, but a lot more fluidly than just like,
yeah. I know what you mean. Like it would be. It's kind of like you need a Google of text message to come through with some like real innovative idea in it. I just butchered that.
innovative.
Just couldn't even get the word out. But yeah, you need someone like a company that would design something for businesses like text message to be super efficient without having to worry about email.
Yeah. I mean, that already exists. But in hospitality, it's like, I wonder how we can communicate better with our staff. Like, we started this thing where you interview someone and you say like, okay, I want you to list 5 qualities that you consider a good employer does, you know? And they write them down, and then you say, I want you to list 5 qualities that a good employee has, you know? And then you can then talk about them. And then at any point when they're working, if they, you know, you can say, look, I'm personally to you, I'm going to make a lot of effort to do these 5 things and be a good employer. But I expect that you also do your 5 things and be a good employee. And in that, you've got like, you know, if someone starts to be just like not performing well, you can talk to them, and not in an aggressive way, because you can just say, hey, look, like you said this, and do you feel like you're doing this right now? And if you're not, like, what's going on? And can we talk about it and find a way to get you like happy and doing it again?
This is, when you told me this a while back, I thought it was the best thing that an employer has ever done in terms of like actually setting ground rules, but in a way that works for both parties, rather than like we were saying before, like I'm the employer, so you just do, you want the job, so I have all the power.
Yeah.
It like gives it like it brings everything back down and like balances it out for everyone.
Yeah. And it's I think more likely that staff will then work harder and stay working for you for longer if you take some time to meet them and understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, for sure. And how's that worked in Herbert Bar?
Super good. Like, we have really good staff retention. All of the staff, everyone's not always happy, but like, even if they come to work and they're like, oh, my day, you know, they're in the shift, they're actually like, they're having fun and they're having a good time. And you can see that reflects like across the tips that they're making and across our sales. So great.
Let's touch on the cocktails, because this is one of my favorite parts of the menu list.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite cocktail? And then I'll tell you my favorite cocktail.
My favorite cocktail kind of changes, I guess, depending on like the weather and what's going on.
Actually, I'll rephrase this question. What is your favorite cocktail to make purely based out of the flavor profile? And then what is your favorite cocktail to drink?
My favorite cocktail to make based on a flavor profile. So there's a classic drink called a Godfather, which is a shot of Scotch whiskey and a shot of amaretto over the ice. But if you make it with Islay whiskey, which is like smoky and peaty, then it's an insanely delicious drink, and it's super easy, right? It's got 2 ingredients. It's like a shot of each. It's so easy to make. But the like relationship between the smoky, peaty flavors and the malt and the like floral aspect of the amaretto, the two just work together so well. I think that's my favorite drink to make because it's really easy to make, and it's like super
efficient,
minimal investment, maximum reward. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, yep, done. Wow, this is awesome. I know, like, so that would be my favorite to drink. I got to give it to the Negroni. I think, like, the Negroni or the espresso martini. I had a chance while in London to work with the guy called Dick Bradsell, who invented the espresso martini.
Really?
Yeah. And like the
guy,
the inventor, like
the guy,
undisputed. It's
world champion.
Not world champion, but undisputed. He created the drink.
Yeah, right. How old's this guy?
He's now passed away. But I guess he'd be like late 60s now, early 70s.
How? Just this is still on topic, but how long ago did he invent that drink?
Oh, like 30 years, something like that.
Man, imagine when that hit, like the first time.
Well, like,
it was like,
as the story goes, like Kate Moss goes up to him, and he's like a pretty famous bartender, and she's like, "Dick, I want you to make me a drink that's gonna wake me up and fuck me up." And then that was the birth of the espresso martini.
You heard it here first, unless someone else has already heard that story, but that's sick. That's crazy.
So I like drinking espresso martinis because it kind of reminds me of him. And on our next cocktail list, which is going to launch in the next 2 weeks, we're putting on a drink that's called Dick.
Oh, that's where that comes from.
Yeah. So it's an homage to him.
That's so cool.
But yeah, that or Negroni. Just because like every time I've gone to Italy, it's such like a
standard.
A rite of passage almost. And like I've had so many over there, and like some really, really good ones and some really, really bad ones. But every time I drink a Negroni, I just think about Italy.
Nice. All right, I'll give you mine.
Tell me.
But I'm not going to tell you the ones that I make because I don't make any of them. So I really
You'd be a good bartender.
I actually really want to be a bartender.
You should.
I'm not even joking. That's like one of my things. When like,
because you got the pizzazz.
Yeah, just like going around to all the different bars. I really enjoyed like the social aspect of like making drinks and like chatting to people. Like similar, the vibe that you have at Herbert is exactly like the vibe that I'd like to create if I was a bartender.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I just want to chat to people and like make them have the best experience. And I also love drinking cocktails and like having fun.
Yep.
Like the social aspect is so much fun for me because I'm a social person.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, side note. So I can't remember the names, but the one that tastes like the mango macadamia Wheesbar, that one.
Copycat.
That is unreal. So anyone listening, get that in ya because it's so good. And then the second one, which I would just go straight off like visual. I don't think it tastes nice, but it's just more the visual. Is the pot, like the
pot plant,
which is probably cool. Like I guess I don't know, but for me, I think it's so new and fresh because I'd never seen it before.
Yeah, but I made that drink like 10 years ago,
like,
and I'm fucking so over it. I'm so tired of it.
It's like a song, like your favorite, like you're like this band, and it's like the one song that's like Wonderwall for Oasis. He probably hates that song so much.
What's that? Like, you remember like The Living End, and they had that one album that was like everyone was like, and then after
Prison Society, everything after that, everyone's like,
they're like playing gigs. Everyone's like, play your first album.
Like Eminem, everyone loves his early stuff.
Yeah,
hates his old like new stuff.
Yeah.
Or the Ron Burgundy.
Yeah, but like, so I'm trying to move Herbert into like, I'd like to get Herbert up to date. Is what I'd like. I'd like to be like making drinks at Herbert that like now I'm like, this is sick. We should make this.
Oh, so you mean by up to date, like you're up to date?
Yeah, but that takes time, and I'm not sure like a large amount of our audience is like ready for that.
But they weren't. The thing is, they weren't ready for Herbert before it was there, and they all enjoyed it. So why wouldn't they be ready for the next stage of Herbert?
I guess like drinks. Each drink on a menu should facilitate a role, you know, in what it does. So some of the drinks are gimmicky drinks, and some of the drinks are just like bangers that everyone's going to like. And some of them are like kind of just non-offensive, and it's like some of them are a lot harder to understand. And I think it's cool to have that balance on a menu. But like if you have a whole menu of basic bitch drinks, then it's like, okay, like, you know,
Yeah.
what else you got? You got something like a bit more staunch, or are we only doing like sugar today? But then if you only have staunch drinks, then someone's like, this fucking bar's hectic, you know?
Omelette.
Yeah. So you have like these positions they need to fill. And in like trying to move towards like a more modern bar program, it's like you can't sacrifice those positions. And so it's how do you like transition them from one to another?
Like the ratio of how you have them.
It's like our most popular cocktail is the lychee lemon myrtle martini.
Is it?
Yep. We sell so many of them.
The chicks really like that one, don't they?
They do. Because it's got a little love heart on top and like
yeah.
with the leaf,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So like that drink's role on a menu is that. It's like it just gets ordered because it's like it's lychee, it's got froth, it's got a love heart on top, like, and people just want that.
Perfect combination.
Yeah.
Put a bit of froth, bit of fruit, and everyone's like, let's go.
It is, and that's its job on the menu. And then so to make that drink into like a more, for lack of a better word, like a sophisticated kind of concept, you'd probably alienate its audience and like it would not be fulfilling its role on the menu.
Could you then make more, like, could you still have those drinks, but then have like a sophisticated menu underneath?
Yeah. You're like, if you order from this area, you have shit taste. Then it's like, and then if you order from here,
It just sounds like the most
Scotch.
elitist, like, scumbag if you have like the fun drinks.
Did I tell you about that guy? I met that guy, like I was bartending.
Who's Sean Connery?
Yeah.
Whee!
Did I tell you about that?
No.
Man, this guy comes up the bar and he goes, "Excuse me, do you stock Mount Gay?" And I'm like, "No." And he goes, "That's fine. I'll have a scotch." And then I'm like, I'm having a full fit over here, just like, and then that just took off as a thing. That's fine. I'll have a scotch. Like in any scenario, you know, it's like, fuck, dude. Wow, yesterday we, you know, didn't make very much money. That's fine. I'll have a scotch.
Okay. You should make a drink called the Sean Connery.
The Sean Connery.
I feel like now you have to. It's out there now. What is there a drink that you're working on that you want to tell everyone about before the new bar opens? Because this is your platform, and I kind of want to just pull something random out.
There's a drink I've come up with in my head that I want. It's a friend of mine, his mum passed away, and she was this really talented mosaic artist, like glass mosaics. She did all the churches and all of the windows and stuff. And we were talking one time before she passed away, and we're talking about how cool it'd be to have like a drink which had like different, what looked to be different shards of glass in the primary colors, but that was actually like clear ice, frozen and flavored. And so the drink itself was colorless, but then as the ice slowly melted, it like added these little wisps of color and flavor to the original drink.
What?
Which
Sounds so crazy.
yeah,
So cool.
and we've drawn it out, and like it looks really good. But I tried freezing the ice, and like it just doesn't work. Like color and ice.
Could you like put food coloring in all the ice cubes and then crush them up and then just drop bits of it in, or would it then melt and then just swirl into like a?
I don't
colourful
know.
drink?
But then we were talking about like, okay, so maybe it doesn't need to melt, and then you've got like some sort of thing that looks that color that is frozen. But yeah, there's a bunch of challenges. I'm still trying to figure out how you could actually make this drink. But I would really like to make it because I like the concept, and I'd like to make a drink that's dedicated to her.
That would be so sick. There is one thing that I kind of want to just bring up now that this has crossed my mind. So a lot of bars throughout the world, if you don't drink alcohol, they don't provide you many options in terms of like having non-alcoholic drinks or like non-alcoholic cocktails. Where this is just more for people who are listening who aren't drinking, who want to come and experience the bar experience without, like, you actually provide alcoholless, like zero alcohol cocktails, but they're exactly the same and you still get the flavor.
Yeah, I think like, how can you make a really interesting non-alcoholic drink? Because drinks don't have, like I love tea. You don't need alcohol in that to make it delicious. And so I think that really doesn't get done very well in a lot of places, and you can actually do it so much better. I'm really interested in this chemical that comes from artichokes that's called chinarin, which it alters your taste receptors and makes things taste sweeter than they are. So you could do like zero sugar stuff, but have it still like being perceived as sweet.
You just blow my mind all the time. It's the best. I get so excited every time we talk. My mind's just like, just flooded full of knowledge. I'm so happy. It's so good. Oh, yes, that's the best. All right. There's one thing we like to do at the end of the pod. Well, two things. I always stuff this up. There's two things we like to do. One, we like to shout out a local legend who you think should come on the show. And two is we like to give advice to anyone who either is really old, not really old, like old and working just a dead-end job and they're not happy with themselves, or the young aspiring teenager or someone even younger than that who's listening and wants to like focus on their dreams. So we'll start with the first one.
Who could I shout out? I'll probably shout out Casey. My girlfriend Casey Skillback. She
Little
is
skills.
the skill slayer. She is an extremely talented photographer. Shreds at a level that I will never be able to reach at, and I think she'd be pretty cool to talk to about perspectives on things. She's pretty out there, so
I've already told her she's coming on.
she's coming on.
But I mean, like, if you didn't shout her out, she'd probably be like, no, she should definitely come on because she's an absolute legend. And I'm so excited to get her on. And then the second one is,
just approach everything with a good attitude, and be ready to deal with the consequences, and everything will work out.
boom, that's it. Oh, this has been another amazing episode of Creative Appetite. I hope you all enjoyed it because I got so much enjoyment out of this. And yeah, you know the drill. Hang around for the next one. Let's go.